I don't know if
Welcome
it's tacky
home
for
to
me to
St.
hang this on
Anne's.
here, but I appreciate Margie was like, you know, you can hang your cane on things. And I was like, I can't.
We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons.
All right, well, let's talk about the Good Shepherd. This is everybody's favorite Sunday-ish. I don't know. Maybe Christmas is. Or Easter. I don't know. We all have different favorites. But the Good Shepherd is always a really popular one because we good white Europeans love a good pastoral scene. We love it. It just sounds adorable, doesn't it? And Jesse's the only person here who actually has experience dealing with sheep. So the rest of us are like, yeah, it's cute. Sheep are cute. And they are cute. Oh my gosh. For my 40th birthday, I've already told Eric it's a baby goat or a baby lamb. He's going to Hawaii for his 40th. I should get a 4-legged baby. I have to get 2. Yeah, because they need company. They don't want to be all alone. What? Yeah, that's right. That's okay. We're not listening to him right now. I'm talking right now. So let's talk about shepherds and sheep and all that good fun stuff, because the reality is most of us do not have experience with any of this. So this was an image that would have been more common at that time because there would be a lot of experience with shepherds and sheep and all that, flocks and things like that. Missouri, we're more of cattle country. So if I was going to use an image, I would probably have to use cattle, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to kind of talk. I know, I love cows too. That's true. Baby cows, they're also on the list of possibilities. I do love a good baby cow. Cows are like the only thing that is cute for their entire life. Think about it. Cows are always cute. They're always beautiful. Cats are also always wonderful. That's right. So, gosh, we're having, like, it's going to be a rough day today, isn't it? It's just going to be a rough day. But I think it's important to talk about the image for them at that time and what that kind of meant. So you and I, in our agricultural world, are used to land owning, right? It's a Western European thing. It comes later, this idea of like owning land. So this is my land that my sheep, my cattle graze on, right? We're used to that. So when we think of this image, we think of that. That's not the case at this time. At this time, it was much more widespread, so there would be massive areas, and the sheep would all go into that massive area. So one of the things was you had to know which one were yours, right? And so one of the ways that would happen is that the sheep would kind of know the shepherd, and the shepherd would actually know which sheep are mine versus which sheep are somebody else's, and that's when they're all in common together. Actually, you see this a little bit in the West. They do have massive areas of grazing, but you don't really see it much in Missouri because we're landowners. That's mine, right there, right? Okay, so because you take the sheep out into a massive area, you wouldn't necessarily bring the sheep back every day to your spot, right? So shepherding was a full-time thing. That's what you did. And so you would go out in the outs, and but you would need to contain them because sheep wander. They wander. Who doesn't? It's delightful, wandering. And so you would need to contain them at night because they wander. And the shepherd is tired, and they need to sleep. So you would have random corrals, if you will, but that's a very general term. It wasn't really much of a corral. It was more of a pile of rocks, but it was 3-sided, right? Because why not? So you would be out there, and you'd need to put your sheep away, so you'd stick them in 3 corners. But how are you going to keep them in a 3-sided place? You ain't got no gate. Who's going to be the gate? You lay across the front. You are physically the gate. So the shepherd would sleep on the fourth side. The shepherd was the fourth side of the gate. They were literally physically the gate. So if somebody, because an easy way to get money is to steal somebody else's animals, how are you going to get them? Because the stupid gate is the annoying shepherd, and you can't go through there. How are you going to get the sheep? You're going to go in another way. You're going to circumvent the gate. Or worst case scenario, you might beat up the shepherd. But, I mean, that's a lot of work. And you never know, the shepherd's probably armed with a big old stick or something. And sheep aren't really worth that much effort. So you might come in the other side, you might entice the sheep to go over one of the ledges, but you would steal that way. You would circumvent the system. Do you understand why this image is so powerful then? That the shepherd is literally the gate. The shepherd and the sheep know each other. I was going to make a joke about them being intimately known, but I'm not going to. Someday later, ask me about syphilis. But we're not going to talk about it now, because that's really not sermon appropriate. But sometime, because I have a history degree, sometime ask me about it, because why not? I know things. I like to share the things that I know. Anyway, so this image has deep, deep meaning, right? It is deeply powerful. And yet it's sometimes hard for us to catch it because of this. But what I really want us to focus on is the knowing. The sheep knowing and the shepherd knowing them. Because that is something that speaks to us. This idea of being known and of hearing and following. Because you guys, we have a habit of following a lot of things. And the other part of this image is Jesus saying, but there are false voices. There are false voices that are tempting to follow. And how do we know which one is which, guys? Because as much as we want to be the shepherd, the reality is we're not. The reality is we're people wandering around trying to figure out how to follow God. And sometimes that's easy, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times we're trying to figure out what's my stuff, what's the world's stuff, and what's God. Because all of those voices are telling us things. And the vast majority of the time, our inner voice, God's voice, and everyone else's voices don't necessarily agree. What I'm going to tell you almost consistently, 100% of the time, is the world's voice and God's voice don't sound alike. They sound very different. And in fact, following God's voice will frequently get you in trouble in the world. But how do we figure out which one is which? Because like these sheep, and this is why Jesus uses this image, is because we get confused so easily. But I'm going to tell you, there's a litmus test. And so rarely there's a good litmus test. So when there is in Scripture, I'm here for it. I'm 100% here for a litmus test. It has to be life-giving. It is based on love. If it is not a life-giving message to those around you, if it is not love, it's a different shepherd. And it's the wrong one. And it is that simple. Because there are so many voices in our culture, aren't there? Telling us all the different things. And in fact, a lot of them cloak themselves in divinity. They cloak themselves in God says, Scripture says, this says, but then you listen, and you're like, there's a lot of hate wrapped up in what you're saying God said. There's a lot of you feeling really good about yourself while making other people feel really bad about themselves. Does God do that? Does Jesus do that? Consistently, I will tell you, Jesus does not do that. Jesus is not about hate. Jesus is not about harming others. And so if you hear a voice cloaked in, well, you know, according to my religion, Christianity would do this. And suddenly that doing that is harming a group of people that's not that person. Have you ever noticed that, like, across the board, it's never harming that person? Consistently, that is the voice of a robber. Consistently, that is the voice of a robber, a thief, and a bandit. And I'll tell you, the worst kind of thief and bandit is one that cloaks themselves in God to commit their atrocities. You and I have to listen to a voice of love. And sometimes that's hard, because sometimes being in the gate of love will be a dangerous place to be. And it won't always be a comfortable place to be. It won't. When you consistently live out a life of love for others, remember, and I love this quote, justice is love on a public level. And guys, that's not an easy place to be, is it? When we look around us and say, you know what, that's not just. Because it can harm us to say those words, to speak up for other people and say, that's not justice. That looks uncomfortable in many situations. And yet, it's what we're called to do again and again and again. And I know, you read the end of the book, and it doesn't end well for Jesus either. But it ends really well for you and I because of Jesus. And you and I are called to do that again and again and again. So when we come to a place of trying to figure out what voice is it that we're hearing, chances are the voice will not make you comfortable. If it's a voice that offers you comfort, it's probably a thief and a bandit, and it's not going to end well. Because while a thief and a bandit is going to coax that sheep out, what's going to happen to that sheep? Sheared would be the nice ending. Yes. Sheared, fleeced, sheared. That's the nice ending. It's not going to be good. It's going to feel good to you for a second when you hear that voice. It's going to sound good. It's going to sound like you're better than at least those people over there. Or it's going to sound like, yeah, but you only live once. Treat yourself. It's going to sound comforting, isn't it? It's going to sound cozy. And then suddenly, it isn't. But if the voice that you're hearing is the one that says, I know that for a second, this is going to be hard. I realize that. But at the end of the day, this is the right thing to do. If that voice says, we're going to live in love, love for self and love for others, that's the voice that you and I are called to listen to. And I get that it's hard. I do. I get that it's really, really hard. And if you think I don't wrestle with which voice to listen to every single day, I do. Because it's hard. Because I want my ministry to be the one that everyone else has. Right? I look around and I'm like, success looks like this. It looks like a cardinal parish. It looks like having a staff. And not having to work a whole nother job the rest of the week. And being successful in education means making more money, going to a better district. It looks amazing. It looks like retiring early. But is that the voice? Is that the voice? It probably isn't what he said. I would love to say, oh gosh, that's a tempting voice. I like the voice that has nicer cars. I like the voice that has nicer houses. I like the voice that says, I don't have to live in Missouri anymore. I'm going to the mountains in Colorado. That's the voice I want. Have you been to the mountains in Colorado? I mean, have you? Have you? Yeah. When this cow escapes, she'd go into the mountains. I get to call myself a heifer because I get to. And I've had babies, so it's fine. But gosh, every single day, you and I have to wrestle with voices. Every single day. And every single day, we have to ask ourselves if we're willing to be the gate for other people. Are we willing to do that? Because it's hard. And at the end of the day, I'm getting a baby goat. I'm getting two, because I don't want them to get lonely.
We want you to know that you're welcome to join us at 10 a.m. on Sundays. Please be sure to hit subscribe to receive our sermons.
Did you know
we
these
can't
kids
wait to meet you.
Like, it is literally a fight every Sunday. These kids fight. It's like drawing the short straw. Who has to be my assistant? They don't want to be my assistant because it's boring up here. Everyone's staring at me.